Bodybuilders and fans around the world, welcome to another episode of Primetime Muscle. I'm Tim Wilkins, as always, joined by the one and only real deal Chris Cormier.
Fantastic. I'm doing great. I am ready to rock and roll.
It looks like you are.
I am. I came in fresh and ready.
You're all Fonzied out today.
I am the Fonz.
Got your leather. You just finished on Blueberry Hill with the Hooper triplets. The one and only Tarek El-Guindi. Hello, my friend. You're doubting his prowess with the Hooper triplets.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not quite sure what Chris Cormier's existence has come to. But anyways, let's talk about this, explosive bodybuilding season that's starting. I have a lot to say. I'm sure Chris has something to say, so it should be a great show.
Well, we're always excited to talk about any show, but the Arnold Classic is kind of, it's an amazing thing that as we're a sport that starts with the second biggest show. It'd be like the NFL starting with the playoffs. So it's a really great thing, and anybody that sets this show, wins this show, it's usually a precursor or a real good omen going into this Olympia, the 60th Olympia, the epic Olympia, and this show did not disappoint. Guys, before we start with the two champions, and we've got some footage of them, and it was a battle, and I gotta say, it was each of their bests against the other's best. But a few other guys, some notable mentions had their best. Antoine Vaillant, John Delarosa brought his absolute best.
Rafael
Brandao. Talk to us about his condition and how he looked.
So, I said 2 years ago in Brazil during a podcast that Rafael Brandao was the only great Brazilian bodybuilder, and a lot of people criticized me. And 2023 came, and he didn't compete, and nobody qualified for the Olympia. And it turns out that he is the only great bodybuilder from Brazil. His lines are beautiful. His conditioning is impeccable, and he's been adding size, and he's not compromised his midsection. I was talking to Chris, and I trust Chris' opinion when it comes to that. And I said, Chris, can he make it to the first call out at the Olympia? And Chris said, Tarek, I think he can. I think he's one of the best bodybuilders in the world. So I'm amazed that this young man has delivered all calls for him to gain size, but he's not compromised his lines, his conditioning, and his midsection. If he continues on this path, like Chris said, the sky's the limit.
Before we get Chris's thoughts, I want to throw props to Chris for nailing Rafael Brandao.
Huh? He's got perfect accent.
Yes. Rafael Brandao.
Yes.
Rafael.
Chris has been to Brazil many times. People don't know this. He's been to Brazil multiple times. He's going to Brazil for the Arnold Classic, South America. He's got plenty of illegitimate children there. He probably has a son named Rafael.
Now we're doing the jokes today. Now we're doing the jokes. I knew he was setting me up for something.
Send us some 23andMe, people. Send us some 23andMe. Let's get the truth out.
I'm sure down there it's a 23 or something.
Yes, they have that.
Conmigo. So let's talk about Rafael Brandao's conditioning and the improvements he brought.
Well, I mean, I was surprised, and we did a segment on him. Particularly, he was the main guy, co-host at the Dennis James podcast, and he was saying he was confident. He was going for the win. He said, on paper, I would be in the top 3 as people would think from my placings from the previously, but he was sure he was going to either win the show or he was going to make a big splash, and I think he did make a big splash. I mean, that front lat spread, I think, was the best in the whole entire competition. I would have him in first place there, and I think he took chunks. I mean, dare I do say it, but he took chunks out of Samson's charge for the title. He took some chinks out of his armor, and I think some of those shots, the 3/4 shots to the front, Dynamite can get a little better, and some of the poses is a little questionable to me.
You said second and third could have gone either way, but some of it came down to his posing.
You could have. Yeah, he stands kind of straight up for me, and I would like to see him utilize those legs. Bend those knees a little bit, buddy. You're a tall guy. You don't need to stand straight up and down like that. And, when you walk around, just be more fluent with your movements. You're a little bit stiff. So maybe I need to take him to the club and get him to move those hips a little bit. I don't know.
Get that salsa going.
Yeah.
So, you got more, Rafael?
No, yeah, that's a really good point. No, moving on to Samson, if you allow me. Is that where you're going?
That's where I was going.
We were talking prior, after the Olympia, he won those shows, he placed third at the Olympia. We were saying he's the biggest threat to win the title at the Olympia. Look what happened after his meeting with Hadi Choopan. Now we're discussing if Rafael beat him in a few poses. That's how fluid the situation is. You can go from, I'm the biggest threat, now people are saying, well, maybe Rafael won a few poses. That is why it's important to make a statement in every show. And in this show, despite having a good performance, some people think he was even better than the Olympia. He didn't pressure Hadi enough for us to think that he can do the same at the Olympia. And it's speculating, but...
Okay, we all talked about this. We all talked about how everybody brought their best. You look at the Hadi from this show, it was 2021, 22 Hadi. Samson was bigger and harder than he was. However, and I'm a fan at the most basic level. My wife teases me because I'm such a fanboy for this trash. I watch the lead-in pictures on everybody's social media, and everybody by themselves with the right light looks like a winner. And Samson Dauda looked unstoppable. Friday night, he looked really good, correct?
Yes.
And there was a fade? Chris?
Things got a little bit blurry, I think, a little bit.
His lines?
Yes, we were anticipating what we were seeing leading up to the show. And that's why we had doubts in Hadi a little bit. Maybe Hadi's going to try to play a bigger game. Maybe so. But, I mean, Hadi, I feel like he was giving the guy a jab all night and he couldn't answer it. He just had no answer for his jab. His jab, jab, jab. Even when the referee called a break, he's still jabbing out of the break. He was jabbing the whole time and he just couldn't answer it. I mean, the way he was utilizing his abs throughout the show, it was not even a shot called and he's going vacuum, abs, stratus. And he was just like letting him know that, hey, I got something that you don't possess as good as mine, and I'm going to keep hitting you with it all night long for the rest of this competition.
I agree with Chris. This was an old school brawl where Hadi Choopan, beat down Samson in every pose, and Hadi came in there knowing he might have better lines than me, he might be taller than me or bigger than me, but I'm going to expose him with conditioning. And like Chris said, man, he was putting the obliques. If you look at that, he beat him in every pose. He beat him in every single pose. This was a beat down, and Samson needs to respond. Hadi Choopan's performance at the Arnold was his best ever. I've judged him when he took third place at the Olympia twice. I've judged him when he took first place at the Olympia, when he took second place. This was Hadi Choopan's best physique. And I'm going to go as far as to say that if he presented this physique at the Olympia in 2023, he would have been two-time Mr. Olympia.
Yes, Tarek, you're right. And he didn't go for size. He didn't go for trying to be the biggest guy. He just played his own game, and I think he knew something going into the show. I feel like he knew that there was no way he was going to catch him on conditioning, and I think he was going to utilize that plan throughout the show, and it worked perfectly to the T.
These guys, they both got, 8 months basically, or 7 months before the Olympia, 7.5 months, to make any changes. Hadi has arguably what changes to make after this show compared to last year?
Zero chances. Look, can you put the camera on me? Here we go. Folks, sometimes the feedback is don't do anything. Hadi Choopan's feedback is don't do anything. He was so sharp. He posed so well. There is nothing to change. He sent a message to Derek Lunsford saying, you probably beat me when I wasn't at my best. This is my best. Good luck. And Derek Lunsford needs to go to bed saying, if I don't improve my physique, I might take second at the Olympia. This is going to be an all-out brawl. And Samson Dauda, he's so pissed, he's going back to the UK swimming. That's how angry he is. Because everybody was saying, including myself and Chris, he can be the biggest threat at the Mr. Olympia. Not after what happened between him and Hadi. Samson, you gotta be angry. You gotta deliver at the Olympia and beat those two guys to maintain this reputation of the future.
Now, we're going to wrap this, but I got something else to cover with you in just a second. You put out an Olympia TV episode talking about it. Hadi made a direct message. He sent a message to Derek to say, this is the package or better I'm bringing to the Olympia. Derek, of course, in the home gym, off season, without cutting, hit an oblique and an ab shot, and his dense, thick, striated abs 8 months out, 10 months out. So it is going to be an epic battle between these two guys.
Yes, but Tim, we talked about his abs in a few segments ago, months ago, maybe even a year ago. I was saying he has to do something with those abs. They don't match the overall bells and whistles of his physique, and they have to be up to par with Hadi's. Hadi's also have maturity. So it's a maturity level that he don't possess at this time of his career, but you must have those abs stand out and be very powerful muscle group for you.
All right, guys, I want to cover one last thing. A well-deserved Lifetime Achievement Award for Jay Cutler. And as the class act that he is, he had a number of people to thank for pushing him, inspiring him. Ronnie Coleman, of course, he threw out a big thanks to Ronnie. And our very own Chris Cormier got a thank you and an inspirational push.
Thank you. Thanks, Jay. That was very classy of you, and it was right on point. It was like I made a point to talk to him about different things that are going to help him in his career. The deep tissue massage, he had no idea about.
Do you wish you hadn't now, looking back? Do you wish you hadn't?
It's okay. It's just the kind of person I am, man. It's okay.
I want to add something. There's something about Chris Cormier which makes him a Mr. Olympia in relationships with competitors. If you go to, we were at the Fit Expo and Chris came up to Ronnie Coleman. The relationship that those guys have, the relationship that Chris Cormier has with Jay Cutler, the relationship that Chris Cormier has with everybody is unmatched. Chris Cormier is the only bodybuilder that always helped everybody. It's a very selfish, sometimes, sport. You need to be the best and other people not to be as good as you. But Chris has always been different. And that's right now, as he retired and his entire generation retired, Chris is the Mr. Olympia of people that he has helped. For Jay Cutler, for everybody. So I give Chris a lot of credit. Yeah. Chris. You don't have to be a little bitch right now.
Well, we love our Chris Cormier and Jay Cutler.
Nico, come on, Nico. You gotta edit that. If he cries like a little bitch, that's gonna take all the emotion out of it. Cry like a real man.
We want to congratulate Jay Cutler for his Lifetime Achievement Award, and it is well deserved. And you were a class act in your speech. And we have more Arnold Classic to cover when we come back on Primetime Muscle. And we're back on Primetime Muscle. Still talking about the Arnold Classic, still talking about the Men's Open. Guys, a minute ago, Tarek made a proclamation, direct to camera, put it on me like he does. And he talked about the fact that Hadi, between now and the Olympia, don't touch a thing. It's like when the audio mixer's got all those buttons and the sound is perfect. Well, don't touch the buttons.
I got a little something to say about that. Don't touch a thing. I think you need to level the playing field a little bit more with Derek. because let's not forget how Derek looks from the back. It's like lights out. And so I think he still needs to harden up that back, density, glutes, and hamstrings. And I think that would put him in the driver's seat to possibly retain the title again.
Well, before we move to Tarek's thoughts on Samson, as a competitor, as an athlete, I always want to ask the master, as you have trained me on so many things, all the guys at the top level need to be really cognizant of their midsections, not widening, not thickening, not losing control. How does Hadi thicken up that low to mid back without thickening the midsection and widening out?
It's going to have to be in the gym. It's not at the dinner table. That's what I always say is like, you can't like eat some type of carbohydrates and protein and you're gonna just all of a sudden get dense. It's gonna be, you gotta be a dog in the gym. I know he's a hard trainer in the gym already.
He trains hard, but you're talking heavy deadlifts, is that gonna thicken him up?
I mean, not just deadlifts, the bent over row, the different prone position back exercises you can do, the under grips and everything. All that stuff is going to help him improve that back density, and I think he's going to need it because I know for sure, with Derek being there at the show, he's pretty fired up too. I think he lit a fire under Derek, and I think he's going to come and try to be vastly improved over last year. And I just think that he's going to need a little bit more in the back still for Derek, and I think his front is going to obviously be lights out. So if he can just bring that same intensity all the way around, which is, he's there, don't get me wrong. I mean, he was so impressive, and I like that he didn't try to get put on more size to try to go after Samson, and I like that he played his own game, but I love to see the vintage Hadi Choopan.
The old school back to 3 years ago. All right, Samson. So we talked about, you said, Hadi, don't mess with anything. Everything can be tweaked a little bit. That mid to low back density where he's losing and hardening up that back, where that back double bi and that lat spread, although his lat spread looked much improved this time.
Lat spread's good.
Talk to us about Samson and how he's going to bridge that gap and not lose out third or fourth to Rafael Brandao or some other up-and-comer that's looking for that spot.
Samson's goal was to win the show. He didn't. The reason he didn't win the show is one simple word: conditioning. If Samson Dauda is more conditioned, he could have won this show. That's what he needs to work on. Can he add a little bit more back thickness, a little bit more back detail? Absolutely. But the priority has to be conditioning. I often see guys trying to make a lot of changes and messing it up, especially the people that won shows. They come up to me and say, what do I need to change? So hard to nail your perfect physique. It's so hard, right?
Yeah.
We just asked Ronnie Coleman, 8-time Mr. Olympia, what was your best physique? And he said 1998. What does that tell you? That after 1998, he never got back to his best physique.
It wasn't the size. It was coming with that granite look.
Correct. So that's where Chris and I disagree. And obviously I'm right. Hadi Choopan's best physique was what happened at the Arnold. Don't try to do anything different. Just duplicate that. But when it comes to Samson, you gotta change. You gotta come in more conditioned, because what we don't want is a theme, right? And Chris and I were talking last night. Melvin Anthony was a phenomenal competitor, but it became a theme that Melvin couldn't get the hamstring glute tie-in. He couldn't. And all of a sudden, that's all people are talking about. They forget about Melvin Anthony's tiny little waist, his posing and everything. We don't want this to become a theme. Samson Dauda needs to come in better conditioning.
Set aside, Chris, the fact that I wasn't invited to that conversation for a minute and move on to our next point. Tarek?
But if it becomes a theme, let me reiterate, if it becomes a theme, I don't think judges will take you as serious as a contender if that continues.
So that said, so you got Samson, you got the couple of years where he did tighten up at this show from the Olympia. Everybody was, or was he? I thought he was a little tighter.
Yeah, I mean, he was a little tighter, but I mean, we still are thirsty to see the lines, the granite lines. You know, don't let anything be blurry. He has all the striations, and I mean, you see it from time to time on Instagram. So, you know, he kept posing from the back, but when he turned to the front, we was expecting more. I think when he hits the front lat spread, I mean, can you give a vacuum or anything like that to set off this look that you have from the front lat spread? Rafael pulling the vacuum on the lat spread. You got to pull the vacuum, get that. If you want to get that Lee Haney look, Lee Haney would pull a vacuum on the front lat spread.
I'm going to turn this back to you in a minute, but I'm going to make a proclamation, and hopefully you're both going to back me up. As competitors at every level, you coach men and women, as competitors at every level, we get obsessed with the scale. And you say, I'm going to be the biggest guy. I'm going to put on size. I'm going to bulk up. And then you get there, and the guy that's a little more cut looks bigger.
Looks better, and I mean, it's just a better look on the stage. It's like when you start worrying about, am I going to be 300 pounds, I mean, that's not for everybody. That's some of the best physiques in the world, in the history of the world, was 250, 260 tops, 245, 230, like that. It was never a guy that's 300.
There was only a couple on stage ever. Gunter was one of my favorites, who would start his diet in 295 and step on stage at 320.
Yeah, and then when Ronnie tried to go heavier, he didn't look as good.
Exactly. The scale, and I'm quoting here Bob Ciccarello because he's real shy. The scale has defeated more bodybuilders than Ronnie Coleman and Lee Haney combined. Everybody thinking about being 300 pounds and losing to the 230 guy.
Right.
That's a theme for you, Tim Wilkins.
I like it. So Chris threw his out there. As a judge, you're looking at Samson. You already said conditioning. Are there any individual body parts you say, all right?
The back detail. But I think if Samson, despite his back not being where it should be, if he was conditioned, he would have beaten Hadi Choopan because he's got the size.
What about Hadi's lat spread? It was just like, it looked like he had extra extenders.
It wrapped around.
But here's the deal. Okay, Chris, you beat Ronnie Coleman on abs and thighs your entire career.
Yeah.
Okay? You don't need to be in all poses. So it's okay if Samson loses a back double biceps, a back lat spread to Hadi Choopan. With his front double biceps, if he's conditioned, then he's beating him on front double biceps, on front lat spread, side chest, side triceps, and then he loses 2 poses. Derek Lunsford lost 3 poses to Hadi and is Mr. Olympia.
I even think if you see the front double bicep, if he pulled a harder vacuum, that's going to help him. I mean, because if you do that half vacuum thing and then Hadi's pulling his navel all the way to his spine like that, then you're going to be in trouble because this is not going to look the same or look as good.
Well, looking at the pictures, he could have been a little harder, more feathery. You look at the medialis.
Look at the quads. Man.
Look at those quads.
I need to have some lines and hopefully some striations in that shot. The separation in the biceps and triceps and through there. Bring those lats, the lats look like they came down a little bit, but if you could pull a vacuum in that shot with some more deeper cuts in the legs, then you're going to get a whole different look out of that shot.
Well, speaking of Ciccarello and Ronnie, there was a fun moment over the weekend with a round table they were having on stage with him and Jay and Ronnie. And bro, let me ask you, what's the difference between heavy weights and heavy ass weights? And Ronnie's response, what was the difference between a heavy and heavy ass weights?
Heavy weight.
They're just heavier.
Whose response?
Ronnie. Ronnie said the difference is they're heavier.
Ronnie's personality is something we'll never see again, man. I mean, that southern accent, that simple attitude with that massive body, you just can't help loving the guy.
I remember we were in New Zealand, and we were on the stage doing a typical, you lining up, the promoter's telling you, I want you to stand here, stand here, stand here. So he said, I want competitor 1, 3, 5, 7. I want you guys to stand here, here, here. And I want 2, 4, 6. And then this guy goes, what? He said, what? He couldn't hear him. But Ronnie thought that he didn't understand what odds and evens was. So he goes, y'all don't have odds and evens out here? He's 1, 3, 5. No, he said 2, 4, 6, 8. That's even. 1, 3, 5, 7. That's all. And I just died. I was like, you got to teach him. You got to teach him odds and evens out here.
Well, when we come back, we're going to talk, just touch more about the men's open this year's Arnold Classic and how some of these guys are going to have to change it up a little bit and where they may fare coming up to this year's epic 60th Olympia in Las Vegas when we come back on Primetime Muscle. All right, guys, we talked a little bit at the early part of the show about some of the 3rd through 4th, 5th, 6th honorable mentions. You got some other guys. One that we didn't mention was Hakeem Williams.
Man, Chris and I have been talking about Hakeem Williams for the last 50 years. Hakeem Williams, he has some poses. He's Mr. Olympia. Side chest, side triceps, his thickness, if his condition is game over. Nobody can beat him on those poses. And then from the back double biceps, back lat spread, he's out of the top 10. I mean, Hakeem Williams is Mr. Olympia in 2 poses, but then he's out of the top 10 in some of these other poses. If Hakeem has a back with detail and thickness and width, and his condition, it's over. He beats everybody.
Trouble.
He's got the small waist, huge arms, his legs are massive, but when he turns on the back, we just don't see anything that matches his side poses. And at the finals, he was in the final call out with the top 4. That's how good he is when he gets conditioned. Hakeem Williams is the biggest mystery of bodybuilding in the last 15 years.
But let's give him some credit, Tarek. He did come back from shoulder surgery, torn labrum, and, it took him a whole, 6 to 8 to 10 months to try to get back to normal. He's still trying to get in his mind, the mind tricks that it plays with you when you do surgery. And, give him some credit, man. He worked with Chris Aceto for this show. So he had a different coaching style. I saw the feathering in the legs. I thought the judges saw the same. And some of those shots, man, a little bit more improved the abs. And I don't know, if you can get that back, better with the lat spread and everything, like he said, Tarek said. But I feel like, he had some shots there. You're like, damn, he's still there. And I wasn't expecting him to be so there with knowing that he had surgery like that. But as time went on in the show, he got better and better, and the judges tried to bring him up just to see. And I think Terry, that was like, okay, he was so far behind from the start, and then he did make the first call out, correct?
But
he still fell off.
He probably scored really low in prejudging, and he scored quite high in the finals, but his scoring in prejudging was so low he couldn't recover and place in the 5th or 4th spot, which happens quite often. And he likes to be the underdog. He says, Tarek, I like to be the underdog. I'm like, Hakeem, when you pose from the side, you look like Ronnie Coleman. You're never going to be the underdog. You're always going to be the guy that we're wondering about. But I love the guy. Chris and I love Hakeem, and we want him to just blossom. And I feel like time should be coming.
But the clock is ticking.
And also on that side chest, I feel like he just lets this relax. He's flexing here, that side quad is just lights out. But I feel like this pec is just relaxing. It's kind of like, I don't want to say droopy, but it's like gravity is pulling at it, and he's not really picking it up with a little bit of tension. I was always taught to put a little tension in it.
A little tension. So another guy, speaking of some very improved quads and improved conditioning overall, we haven't mentioned James Hollingshead.
You know, James Hollingshead has always been a very good bodybuilder. He's kind of the British, massive. You know, he has some poses where he looks huge. Chris was right. In terms of his abs, we need to see deeper separation in his abs. Do I think this was the best James Hollingshead? No, I don't. He won a show in Portugal a few years back, or Spain, I think it was Portugal, and he looked incredible and actually beat Rafael Brandao. But I still think we have not seen the best of James Hollingshead. I think he can surprise us and possibly be on that first call out. He beat Rafael Brandao one time. He should have been on that first call out, you know, with the top 4, top 5. But, you know, good positioning for him. I like James.
So he had legs like a horse. Someone who obviously did not this time, though, is someone called Horse. Horse MD, we were hoping for big, big things after last year.
Wait. I didn't get a chance to say my piece.
You do your piece.
All right.
Jump right in, Chris.
James Hollingshead, I mean, I was impressed because leading up to the show, we had him in a solid 5th position. We had him up to 3rd at some times during the course of this competitional prep. But we did think that he was going to be in the top 5, and I think that he was happy to be in the top 5. I think he felt like, I made my mark. I'm not going away, soaking and contemplating, retirement or something like that. He did improve the abs a little bit. We need more. I think it's going to be a process of possibly a whole nother year in that area. But I think he has improved. That side tricep of his, holy, that thing was lights out. I mean, to have that big horseshoe standing out there was a breath of fresh air. I think his back shots was improved. I see him training. I think he don't have the widest clavicle bone, as my colleague says all the time, but he does need to. I mean, if I was him, I wouldn't mess around with those trapezius too much, because the higher that gets, the more narrow you're going to look in the process of you trying to go on stage. So I would chill out in the trapezius area, but getting more aesthetic, keeping those lines. I think you're on the right track, and I'm looking to see more out of you, James.
So Chris said, hold your horses. Let's go back. Horse MD.
Horse MD.
I judged him in Romania, looked incredible, condition, big, great poses, just needed to improve back double biceps. Disappointed at the Arnold, was not conditioned at all, was actually sweating a little bit. And he was the first one to say, man, I was not at my best. I like the young man because he's just starting his career. The Brazilian media is going to crash on him because if they don't win every single show, they hate him. But he's just beginning. But man, he wasn't his best. It wasn't. And the hype was real, right? People thought this guy Horse was going to be 4th. Some people saying he was going to beat Rafael. And he was sweating so much. He looked like a water buffalo there sometimes.
Yeah, Rafael
it's part of the growing process.
Rafael said there's no way he was going to be here. That's what he said. I don't know. But yeah, it's a learning process. He's trying to find his body. I just think he's just trying to be too big. He's thinking of size so much. And I don't think that's necessary for his physique. And, coming from the classic division up into the open division, I think it's just going to take time. But take your time, young man. Slow down and just be a solid physique. Don't try to be so big. The legs and everything is big enough. You got to get that middle of your back thicker, more dense, more development. He's good in the 3/4 shots. Impressive from the back, but when you go dead on, back double bicep, compulsories and everything, you're going to need that solid foundation of thickness.
Let's talk about Rafael. And you look at the Arnold. He is not now, he is not qualified for the Arnold. He's got to go back somewhere and qualify, or did Romania do that for him this year?
No, he needs to qualify. He's doing Arnold Classic South America. Looks to be the favorite, right? So we'll see what happens. But, man, he's the third best bodybuilder at the Arnold Classic. You know, I think Brazil finally has bodybuilding, right? I've always said you guys are not as good as the ladies. Franciele Matos, Isa Piscini, Angelica Teixeira. I think we finally can say Brazil has leveled up. You got Diogo winning. You got, Ramon winning the Arnold, placing second, and now Brandao in third. These guys are responding to my call. I criticized them. I said they got no business being compared to the women, but they're answering the call.
Well, we're going to talk about classic physique in an upcoming episode, but that and women's wellness were Brazilian explosions.
Exactly. I want to talk about John Delarosa. John Delarosa turned pro in 2011. He was the heavyweight champion. On that day, Steve Cutler won the overall. John Delarosa has won pro shows. He won in Puerto Rico. I thought we had seen the best of John Delarosa, and I was wrong. Chris, Tim, this might have been the best John Delarosa. I mean, so. I was shocked. John, you shocked the world.
Yes, I talked to his dad out there in the lobby. He was very proud of him and was waiting for him. I thought from the back he was definitely the best I ever seen of him. I had the cuts in the hamstring, leading up to striated glutes, leading up to that Christmas tree, leading up to development, leading up to him showcasing his back. That took a long time coming. He's not a tall guy in stature, but I mean, a little bit. He can even bring a little bit more with the abs. Abs a little bit thicker, a little bit more with the chest, a little bit more chest thickness, and shoot, he can find himself winning the show coming up here pretty soon.
Okay, we talked about this on the ride over to the studios today. Rafael Brandao, amazing third at the Arnold Classic. That's a huge, big move up and a big statement for him. You talk about the lineup at the 60th Olympia, and you're hitting a series of brick walls to make that top 5, 6, 7. Of course, you got Derek and Hadi up there. You got Samson. Then you've got an improved and healed Nick Walker back.
Man, he looked like a rhinoceros on stage. When he hit the most muscular with the shirt, I thought it was going to explode.
You got that. You got Hunter. Looks like he's put on 15 pounds of quality. Andrew jacked. You've got a whole series of guys right there in that 6, 5, 6, and 7 spot. He's going to have a battle on his hands to make that top 5.
Well, here's one thing that's interesting. We're all talking about Samson Dauda, aesthetically pleasing physique and how beautiful he is. He's got the size and he's got the lines, but the conditioning is not there. The reason we talk so much about the lines of Samson Dauda is because he's on a lineup where some of the guys placing ahead of him or right behind him don't have some of these beautiful lines. Hadi looked incredible, unbelievable, but his lines are not as beautiful as Samson or Rafael. The key question, like Chris said, is as Rafael continues to deliver on the conditioning and growing on size, he might be the guy that actually we are talking about beating some of these guys with the lines, with the shape. He's taller than them, and he continues to add size. He might be the future, right?
Oh, yeah. And that most muscular to the front, like this, lights out. You can show the waist. It shows the ab thickness. It shows the shape. It shows the cuts and that beautiful shape he has. I don't particularly like when he goes into the crab after that. I don't like the crab on him, but I do like when he showed that most muscular claps and hands in the front.
Well, guys, with the 60th Olympia coming up, one of the rule changes I loved this year was only the top 3 from the Olympia are qualified, as our future previous Olympia winners. So Dexter, if you're just feeling so inclined, you jump in. But the whole point being, these guys are going to have to be out in shows like your era was, competing to get that chance to be back on that big stage. So the shows are going to be better and the audiences are going to have more treats with the best of the best.
The thing is, when you do a show, don't stop there and then go back and lick your wounds. Keep plugging at it. Maybe you can change something from change a little bit out of your diet, change a little bit out of your training, come back with a better package, but knock out a few in a row, and then call it quits.
Tarek, as always, great show.
I'm excited, man. I love this stuff. I'm excited.
So
Let me
pumped,
prepare
bro.
my smile, because Nico Zane always said, smile to the center camera. So here I am, Nico Zane.
Nico likes your smile.
All right.
He likes when you do that.
As always, give us your opinions, like, share, subscribe, and follow future episodes, as well as our Olympia battles throughout the year. Olympia TV will be your total source on the road to this year's 60th Olympia in Las Vegas.
Can't wait.
Chris Cormier.
Chris Cormier in the house. Leave some comments. Leave some comments about my man over here.
Always. All right, everybody, I'm Tim Wilkins. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Primetime Muscle.